Hello, I'm Jayanto Chatterjee. We are discussing over 4 weeks this topic of management of field sales. Today is our 4th session, and as you would remember from the previous discussion, I'm going to discuss in great depth that how do we create style flexibility in our communication with the customer in the person-to-person selling, the core of field sales activity. How do we manage ourselves so that we are in a better position to create trust with the customer through empathy and through good understanding of the other person's verbally communicated and unspoken needs understood from deeper understanding of the interaction, including understanding of non-verbal communication. So communication style in field sales is basically managing your own behavior. You cannot control your customer's behavior. That is something that you have to take as a given. And it is your responsibility as a salesperson not to be subservient, not to go as per whims and fancies of the customer, but create a situation that a positive win-win communication happens. And as I mentioned yesterday, that process has to first start by understanding of your own behavior. And that behavior, remember, in today's context, is not only your face-to-face real-world behavior, but that behavior is also depicted through the emails that you send, through the phone conversations you have, through the Facebook messages that you send, through the WhatsApp messages that you send. So your real-world communication and your virtual world communication, your spoken, written, and electronic communication all contribute towards your communication style. So your communication style is the pattern of your behavior that other people observe, and adaptive selling through adaptive communication is defined as managing your own behavior in order to improve the communication by understanding the other person's behavior better. And this is absolutely key to adaptive selling that we are now discussing. You must understand this concept of bias in communication style. Bias means that we are all human beings, and therefore we have likes and dislikes, we have personal circumstances, we have our physical and mental well-being or situation at any particular point of time. So therefore, the communication of today may have to be managed tomorrow depending on the circumstances or how the customer behaves on the following day. The bias means that if you remain fixed on your position, if you only have your own dislikes and likes guiding in your communication, if you are too centered on your self-interest, then you have bias. And understand that the customer may have a bias. But that is something that is your responsibility to understand and adapt to. So I'm going to go into a little bit more theoretical understanding of communication style. The first concept I bring to you is what we call the dominance continuum. Dominance means that, all the activities that are assertive and forcing the other person, persuading forcefully the other person to agree to you. So usually when we say somebody is dominating, we mean that person is usually decisive, very opinionated, and very strongly assertive, vocal, and so on. These are various words that we use. And this is a research presentation in front of you, where on the left-hand side, we have what we usually call low dominance. This word low is not exactly appropriate here. I would say one side of dominance. And on the right-hand side, we have what we conventionally understand is a person who is highly dominant. So that's why the left-hand side can be called low dominance, right-hand side can be called high dominance. And please understand here that no human being is entirely, I would not say no human being, generally most people are on this continuum. That means they are somewhere in between cooperative and competitive, somewhere between submissive and authoritarian. Now, very interestingly, you can note that the buyers or people who are in purchase management function or buying function, they are naturally somewhat on the right-hand side. So they try to be authoritarian, domineering, insisting, but it doesn't mean that they will be everything on the right-hand side. Somebody who is very decisive and domineering may not necessarily be talkative, may not necessarily be very bold or risk-taking. In fact, a customer may be, depending on the life cycle situation of that product or technology, may be risk-averse, or maybe we will discuss it in more detail next week when we start on product characteristics and the life cycle positions of products and technologies, to give you a deeper understanding that which kind of customer is attracted to which kind of products and solutions. And that will tell you that somebody is not always assertive, somebody may be authoritarian, domineering, but may also be risk averse. So which means fundamentally, it may appear that usually salespeople should be on the left-hand side and buyers will be on the right-hand side, but that's not correct. The salespeople, for example, often will be highly competitive and may be trying to be domineering in the conversation, which will of course be a wrong approach. But you have to understand that if your customer is talkative, then if you are also talkative, then it's a bad transaction. Then it is going to be a lower quality of communication exchange. So if the buyer is talking, the salesperson must be patient to listen more and talk less. So the left-hand side and the right-hand side represent two types of dominance characteristics. And the key point which is right there on the top of this chart is that check your flexibility and adaptability. So what is the key point here? The key point is, are you always on the left or on the right? Or can you, depending on the situation or depending on the other person, can you flex your style? Can you may be normally hesitant, but it may be important for you when dealing with the decisive people to be also very precise and not hesitant. Then you will immediately create some kind of distrust in the mind of the other person. So can you actually manage your own emotional depiction or your own behavior pattern to synchronize to some extent, not act, or I would say, there is a good theoretical concept here, what we call deep acting and surface acting. Deep acting happens when you deeply understand your role in the context of other roles. This comes from theater, but it is applicable here because it's a kind of a person-to-person interaction, communication situation, which is not very different from a stage situation where the actor is on stage and trying to communicate. So sometimes, as you know, even from theater, the actor's silence can be highly communicative in a situation. So you don't have to always speak. So it is, in a good play, we see this flexibility. We see the use of communication tools which are not unidimensional. And that's what you should understand from this particular slide, that there are two sides to this dominance indicator, and the key point is how you create flexibility to go from one side to the other side as needed, and create a mix which we can call the style mix, which is situation sensitive. Okay, then the other dimension is what we call sociability. Sociability is like the other part, which is the dominance part, the dominance indicator, usually relate to technical, quantitative, objective communication, fact-based communication. So, your discussion with the customer on specification, on what horsepower is needed for the customer's requirement of a motor, or what kind of chemical reaction process will be more suited to that particular customer's need. Those will be a little bit dominance driven. But when it comes to non-verbal communication, or when it comes to the mix of objective, quantitative with qualitative information and communication, we have to pay attention to this, what we call sociability indicator. Here again, as you see on the left hand side, we have factors like disciplined, controlled, serious, methodical, calculating, guarded, and cautious, and so on. And the other side, we have easygoing, expressive, light-hearted, spontaneous, open, friendly, humorous. Again, as you see here, you may feel that that the salespersons must be on the right-hand side, and the buyers are usually on the left-hand side. Again, that is not universally applicable. You, as a salesperson, need not always be humorous, because if the other person is not responding to humor, then by trying to be humorous in every situation, you will create a bad communication. So again, it's important to understand that the sociability, it has these two sides, and important is flexibility, adaptability, your ability to understand where the other person is. Because well profile the other person on this chart. And then what we mean by flexibility is how do you manage your side of the chart in a way that it creates good productive communication. So we can actually put it on a matrix, and on this graph, as you see, we have on the y-axis high sociability, low sociability, and on the x-axis we have low dominance to high dominance. And using this, the usual, we are in management, we are very fond of this 2 by 2 matrices. We can create different understanding of how to create good communication. So the high sociability and high dominance, this high situation, will actually be quite emotive, and it actually will be a lot of informality, a lot of emotional exchange. In a sales situation of say something which is a specialty product like jewelry or shopping product like your dress, this type of style may be relevant because the quantitative technical content in that sale may not be that important as will be issues relating to emotion and lifestyle needs. So in that kind of a sales process, we may go for this kind of a combination. So in the emotive style, the key words that you will see is excitable, stimulating, zestful, persuasive, and all these, which means if you are selling a car, you are selling jewelry, you are selling even something like a high value insurance, you may have this emotive style as an appropriate style. But again, I must warn that no style is unidimensional. You may need to mix and match. We can see this other style, which is the directive style, which is high dominance oriented, but may go from high sociability to low sociability. This is a very usual sales situation in business to business or in technical sales. Here, there may be a lot of, because we are dealing with often high value sales, and it may therefore appear that you are facing a tough customer. The customer will usually project a very serious attitude, will try to control the process, and the customer may be giving an impression that he or she is not listening to you. You have to understand this, that this is a situation-driven behavioral pattern which may be reinforced by the natural behavioral pattern of a person. So a top-level management person in a B2B sales situation may actually project a very strong directive style. So there will be these words that you can immediately see that, aggressive, demanding, impatient, pushy, because the customer would like to have something which you would like to have 1 million rupees, maybe wanting to get it at 100,000 rupees. This kind of bargain, again, in the Asian context is also very nominal. A virtuous style, some of two good styles is this, the reflective style, where you actually respond to this earlier style, which is the directive style, with controlled emotional response, measured opinions, and you can therefore mix and match elements from the profile that we had seen before to respond better to a customer who is trying to strongly dominate the communication. So here you can actually use the words, some of these words that you see as a response mechanism. But the one style which is most sales situations demand today for the salesperson is what we call the supportive style. Here we are paying attention to the flexibility issues, to the issues like listen more and talk less, a quiet, confident, fact-based approach, but tempered with empathy and warm communication, not power play, thoughtfulness, deliberateness. And this way of flexible approach, expressed through some of these words that are shown here, but more importantly in this style diagram that we see here, using this diagram we can create your own strategy for managing your own behavior in response to different kind of customer behavioral profiles in different kinds of sales situations. This we will understand a bit more when we discuss about the nature of the buyer in different kinds of product or technology situation next week when we discuss that. Then you will understand that the same buyer may behave differently while buying a machine versus while buying some staple consumables. And therefore, if you are selling soap to as a consumable to an automobile factory, your same buyer will behave in a certain way, and therefore you will have to manage your behavior in a certain way, versus a situation where that same automobile factory is wanting to buy a large CNC machine. That will cause a change in the behavior pattern of the same buyer. And you as a salesperson, therefore, will have to understand that situation as well as the behavioral preferences of your buyer and manage your own behavior style. And key to that is minimizing your own bias. That means you don't stick to one kind of behavior. You go from different, you respond to the situation as needed. So as we show on this diagram, which is the the flexible style diagram, that you have to pay attention to those circles that you see there, that there is this dominance oriented issues as well as sociability oriented issues, and therefore you have to understand in which zone the customer's behavior pattern is located in the context of the type of product or system you are trying to sell, and then understand that how you will position yourself, how you will adapt your communication style to be more effective. So building strong relationship depends on style flexibility. Style flexibility means that on those two axes of dominance and sociability, your ability to mix and match different elements to create a better responsive situation through your own empathetic behavior. That means managing your behavior in response to your buyer's behavior. This is a very core expertise that one needs to develop to become a successful field salesperson. Thank you.